How Scottish are the British royal family? If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. In the meantime, let me tell you their story. Because I've brought you to the Great Hall of Stirling Castle. There can be little things more Scottish than this, to investigate how Scottish are the British royal family. And to do that, I'm going to meet up with Lars Cook. Now, Lars became an amateur historian in 1981. He started performing living history in 1991. He graduated as a mature student of history in 2005 and gained his master's degree in 2007. Lars, how are you, sir?
Doing good.
And you have put together this wonderful chart of the British royal family.
Yep.
Tell me this. I always hear on the comedy shows and stuff that they make fun of the royal family for being German. Mm-hmm. Are they German, really?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Right, okay. That answers that question.
Yeah.
So where's the German thing? Tell me about the German thing.
Well, the German thing comes in because you have Elizabeth, whose surname's Windsor, but
That's the current queen.
That's
Lizzie
the current
the Second.
queen, yeah.
Or Lizzie the First, really.
She's technically Elizabeth
Lizzie
the
the
First of
First.
Scots.
That's an
yes,
argument to be had.
Absolutely. But the name in 1916 gets changed from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to
Windsor.
And that's because of the First World War.
Right.
Now,
We're fighting the Germans at that time.
Absolutely. And it's too Germanic a name, so they decide to change it. So George V decides to change it. Now, George is descended from Victoria, and Victoria herself is descended from George III, well known to your American viewers.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was the one that they rebelled against so they wouldn't have tyranny
That's the one.
or a proper health service, didn't he? That's right.
Absolutely, that's the one. Or the Mad King George, as he's known. Well, his line goes back to George II, to George I.
George II's the guy at Culloden.
Yes.
The guy that we're fighting against at Culloden.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then you have George I, and then George I's grandmother.
So George I, Elector of Hanover, the Germans that come here.
Absolutely, yes. And it's his grandmother that marries Frederick Heinrich von der Pfalz, the King of Bohemia.
That sounds pretty German.
It is. It is pretty German.
And what's her name?
His grandmother is Elizabeth Stewart.
Now that sounds like one of ours.
It is. It is. Absolutely is. She is the eldest daughter of James VI, King of Scots, James I, King of England.
Aha, right. Do we have any other Scottish connection? Because the thing is, I see sometimes I see at the rugby, Prince Harry with an England top on. Sometimes I see Wales with a Wales top on. I suppose they are the Waleses, aren't they?
But they are,
Sons
yes.
of the
Yes,
Prince of
absolutely,
Wales.
yes.
Do you know what I mean? Are they Scottish? Have we got any more Scottish in here?
Well, through Elizabeth's mother, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon,
The Queen Mother.
the Queen Mother, the much beloved
The much
Queen Mother.
beloved gin drinker extraordinaire.
She is descended from the Earls of Strathmore, who can trace their line back hundreds
She's
of
from
years.
Glams, isn't she?
She is, yes.
Aye, in Angus, yeah.
So that Scottish line goes hundreds and hundreds of years back.
All right, okay. And who's she married to?
She married George VI.
Has he got any Scottish in him?
He has, because
Scottish.
his connection, it takes you back to Victoria. He's the.
I thought she was German.
She is, but she married Albert Saxe-Coburg-Gotha,
Who's proper German?
who's proper German. They're actually distant cousins. And again, going back, George III to George I, and back
Oh, so that
to
takes you. So it still
Elizabeth
takes you
Stewart.
back to Elizabeth.
It still
Stewart.
takes you back.
There's a lot of incest here, right? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of family politics, yes.
All right. So Elizabeth first is this Elizabeth Stewart.
Elizabeth Stewart.
Goes off and marries this German in Bohemia.
Yep.
The daughter of James the
Sixth and first.
The people down south will call him James the First. He's a
Yep.
Stuart. Where did they come from?
Well, the Stuarts. I mean, James is the son of Mary Stuart, but they can
Mary, Queen of Scots.
Mary Queen of Scots, absolutely.
Now, Of course, sorry.
The first of the Stuarts brings you back here.
But hold on, there's an important point about Mary Queen of Scots to be made as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because the reason why James the Sixth becomes James the First
Yes.
of England is because he's got both Tudor and Stuart blood.
Absolutely.
Right?
But,
How does that come about?
well, he's actually got it through both his mother and his father. Mary had married Henry Stuart Lord Darnley, the ill-fated Henry Stuart, who was Mary's second husband. But they both shared the same grandmother. Different grandfathers, but same grandmother.
She must have been a bit of a goer.
She was a bit, yes. It was Margaret Tudor,
Margaret
sister of Henry VIII.
So that's where the Tudor line comes in.
Yeah.
That mixes with the Stuart line.
Absolutely.
So because Margaret Tudor marries James IV,
She does.
but he gets killed at Flodden,
Yep, in
fighting
1513.
against her brother Henry VIII, and she remarries.
She marries
And
her.
one stream gives you Henry Lord Darnley, the other stream gives you Mary
Exactly.
Queen of Scots, and
Exactly.
them coming together, they're as Tudorish Stuart as you'll get.
Yeah.
All right. So if we go back further than that,
Yeah.
where does the Stuart?
So the Stuarts, you go back another 6 generations, and the Stuarts, the first of the Stuart kings is born in 1316, but he doesn't become king until 1371.
1371.
So it could be said that the Stuart dynasty goes from 1371 to 1714.
Yes, I suppose if you're a Jacobite, you might take a different view.
Well, absolutely,
1688 would be maybe the
Yeah.
there you go. There's a debate, another debate to be had. Yeah.
And the reason why he's called Stuart is because his father is Walter the High Steward.
But that's a job title, isn't
It's
it?
a job title. Yeah, it's one of the sort of the royal household, but it's an important royal household. It's a hereditary
I suppose it's a
household.
bit like John Smith. Somewhere there was somebody was a blacksmith, wasn't there?
Very
Right?
much so, yes.
Or
absolutely.
Mr. Baker. Somebody
Yes.
was, and
Yeah.
this Walter Stewart, his family for generations had been the High Stewards of
That's
Scotland.
right.
Yeah.
In fact, he was a six, but he had a nice fortuitous marriage because he married the daughter, Marjorie Bruce, of Robert the Bruce, King of
Oh, the
Scots.
daughter. Aye, right, okay.
And when Robert comes to the throne, after the death of his uncle, David, without any heirs to the throne, he takes the surname Stewart, and that comes from the
So-
job title.
Robert the Bruce gets married. He has a daughter called Marjorie.
Yes,
He gets married a second time after the death of it.
He does,
And
yes.
he has a son, David,
Yep.
who becomes David the second.
Yeah.
But he dies.
he dies
Without-
without a legitimate heir
And
to
then
the
they
throne.
go back to Marjorie and say, hold on, has she got any bairns? Aye, she was married to Walter the Steward.
Yes.
And that's how we get the first
And that's how
Stuart,
you get
Robert
the first,
the
of, the,
second.
first
Right.
of the Stuarts.
Right, okay. Fantastic. So, and Robert the Bruce, obviously, he became king because of the Wars of Independence.
Yes,
They now there's a debate, should we call them the Scottish Wars of Independence or not? That's a debate for another video.
That's a complex one, that one.
Yeah. But how did they start?
Robert is descended from David I. Now, David I also has another descendant called Alexander III, King of Scots. When he dies by riding off a cliff between Inverkeithing and Kinghorn, it creates a succession crisis. And the reason why it does is because his daughter is already dead by this point. She has left a daughter of her own.
All right.
Scotland at that point had never had a queen. They only go.
So I was going to say, so
Yeah.
basically, this king dies,
Yeah.
and it creates a problem, right?
Yes.
So there's an end of an era kind of thing, isn't it? There's an end of a line.
Yeah, they could well be, absolutely, yes.
And what line is that then that's come to an end?
This actually is one of the branches of the Canmore line that comes to an end. Now, Margaret sadly dies without being enthroned.
Oh, no.
And she actually shares this distinction with Edward VIII
All right.
as the only other monarch in Scottish history to inherit the throne but never be crowned.
That's brilliant, right? So she's entitled to the throne.
Yes.
Because she dies on the way to Scotland,
She
doesn't
dies
she?
on the way to Scotland,
Right?
yeah.
And Edward the eighth inherits the throne.
He does.
But he gets married to Mrs. Simpson.
That's
Two
right.
very different ways to finish it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that brings an end to the Canmore line.
It does.
But it started with Malcolm Canmore, didn't it? That
Yes.
Canmore line. And that gave us like David the First and
Yeah.
William the Lion that gave us our flag with the lion rampant.
It does,
Yeah?
yes, yes.
So tell us about Malcolm Canmore.
Well, Malcolm's an interesting man. He's a bit of a thug. He's probably the last of the Celtic kings. He loves nothing better than nicking into Northern England, kicking lumps out of them and then coming back
Who
home.
doesn't like that?
He had previously married Ingeborg of Norway, and they had 3 children, one of which was a son who was Duncan II. Now, she then dies. He marries Malcolm marries Margaret Atheling. Now, Margaret Atheling is important in this story. Margaret Atheling's brother, Edward Atheling, is heir to the English throne once the Normans are out of the picture. Because his family.
Because the Normans have come and Harold has got the eye arrow.
Absolutely.
And the Normans take over, but the English then appoint, who's the next king? It's Edgar Atheling, I don't know how to pronounce it.
It varies, but yeah,
this
Atheling,
guy, Margaret's brother.
Yeah.
And so he's the rightful next Saxon English king.
Yes.
All right. And she's his sister.
Yes.
All right.
And they flee.
And how do they get involved with?
Well, they flee and they get blown off course, and they both land near Dunfermline. And they ask Malcolm for sanctuary. Now, they knew Malcolm because they were around when Malcolm was getting English troops in his fight against Macbeth.
Yes, because he got Saxon help.
He did.
To come and overthrow Macbeth, the rightful king.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, Margaret, basically, Malcolm sees this as a way of bringing England and Scotland closer together. He falls in love with Margaret, marries Margaret, and together they have 8 children, 4 of which are kings of Scots.
Whoa, there you go. That's pretty productive. But they also have a daughter who becomes the Queen of England.
She does. She marries Henry I.
Matilda.
Yep.
Marries Henry I. Now here's the thing. So you have Malcolm the Third, Malcolm Canmore.
Malcolm Canmore, yep.
Who some might argue killed the last Celtic king of Scotland, Macbeth. Some might argue Malcolm Canmore himself was the last Celtic king.
There's a debate, yeah.
So he marries a Saxon princess.
He does.
And they have a bunch of Saxon Celtic children.
That's right, yes.
4 of them are kings of Scotland.
Yep.
Yeah. One of them, when Henry I accidentally shoots his brother with an arrow, and he's Johnny on the spot down in England, because England's Norman now.
Absolutely. Oh, very much
and
so,
he
yes.
accidentally kills his brother, right? He killed him, didn't he? And then
he did, yeah.
There was a hunting accident.
It was
and he declares himself king of England,
That's
even
right,
though
he
he's
does.
got an elder brother in Normandy.
Yes.
So he marries the daughter of Margaret and Malcolm, because she is in the line of succession of the Saxon.
Absolutely.
So Malcolm and Margaret have brought Celtic and Saxon together.
Yes.
And Henry and their daughter Matilda bring Norman and Celtic and Saxon together.
It's a very clever move by Henry, because what it does is it brings all 3 together. It closes the circle, brings the Saxons into that royal line, and then brings in the Scots as well to strengthen Henry's position on the throne.
And that's why Prince Wills and Harry should be wearing Scotland tops when they go to the rugby.
Yeah.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. There's lots of Scots in the British royal family. They just don't realise it. I've got loads of other videos. A huge thanks to Lars. We've got loads of other videos about Malcolm Canmore, about James VI, about all the events that have happened in more detail. And there's one of them coming up on screen now. In the meantime, Hammy and Doch is going to be Lama alive. Cherry and Drasta.
How was that?
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. More than welcome. Enjoyed that.